purposely did not read Everything is Fucked because I wanted to talk to you first before I did that.
Okay.
For the people out there that have perhaps are in the same position as me, have perhaps read The Subtle Art, but have not read Everything is Fucked, why should we read Everything is Fucked, and how is it different than The Subtle Art?
Everything is Fucked it's not a sequel. It's more, it's like a deeper analysis of the concepts in Subtle Art. The analogy that I used when it came out was, it's like the calculus to Subtle Art's algebra. So it's not that it's covering new territory. It's just taking the concepts of Subtle Art and applying them to deeper and broader topics. So I reference a lot in Subtle Art social media and how everybody's anxious because everybody's always worrying about how they're being portrayed or how they're appearing. And so Everything is Fucked actually looks at like, okay, what sort of implications does that have for us as a society, as a community? How does that affect how we identify with groups or how we identify with each other? So yeah, it goes into a bit more depth.
Did you feel a certain pressure after the obviously overwhelming success of Subtle Art when writing Everything is Fucked that, it perhaps would not live up to the standards that were, you set the bar incredibly high with Subtle Art?
Yeah. I mean, it's anytime. So Subtle Art is sold over 12 million copies. And I always put that into context. Like, that's like, in the publishing world, that's like Avengers level shit. And it's not, you're never going to hit that mark again. As an author, you're lucky if you hit it once in your career. So, I mean, that realization in and of itself kind of messed with my head going into the next book. And I think if that was it, if it was just me in an empty room having to kind of like sort it out myself in my brain, I think I might have been able to kind of get a handle on it. The problem is that there's so much external pressure that starts happening to you. So suddenly the publisher has all these expectations. The contracts get much, much bigger. Your agent starts calling more often. There's all these people want to talk to you about TV shows and movies and documentaries, and this person wants to work with you and that person wants to work with you. And it becomes very, very difficult to say no and to also not let that affect you. It's coming out of the gates with so much success with my first book. There was definitely a little bit of an imposter syndrome of like, oh shit, what if I got lucky? Like what if I actually have no idea what I'm doing and I just got really, really lucky with that first book. So it was a very stressful time.
Wow. Okay, but at least did that give you perhaps a little bit, even after the cancellation of his groping producer, did it give you the motivation or the the confirmation that you've got the goods?
I think that was a moment for me where I started to realize that for all the difficulty I've had, and we were alluding to this earlier, the glacial progression that I've seen in my career from a stand-up perspective, my writing was actually catching the eyes of bigger people. And it felt like that was a better place to focus. And it might have been that phone call was the beginning of a transition of where I was going to spend the majority of my time for the next 5 or 6 months leading to today.
So because we touched on it very briefly off air, and I wanted to get into it because it sounded, I was very curious when you kind of dropped it before we got on air. You said, I don't even know I think exactly word for word, but it was basically like perhaps, and I don't know if it was a doubt with regards to your comedy, but realizing that there were other paths that were bringing your career maybe to a place you want it to be. I'll let you kind of,
I guess, yeah. So
formulate it.
I've always loved stand-up comedy, and I always dreamed that was the vision, right? You see yourself holding a microphone on stage and that seems very sexy and glamorous. But I was realistic enough when I decided to attack comedy to know that there were various roads in here through, improv, writing, sketch writing, acting, and stand up. There's all kinds of disciplines within the broader cheesecake of comedy. So I was always attacking all of those, but I was definitely spending probably the most amount of time on stand up because you have to.
Right.
You got to be up 5-6 nights a week doing 2 sets a night. You got to try to keep pace with the Mark Normans, the Sam Morills. You'll never match their hustle, but you got to be, trying.
Right.
And I was getting better. I was in a good place. I was headlining on the road, all this stuff and, getting people out, and I could feel myself getting stronger. But the progression in stand-up was just it was like an inch at a time. 1 year to the next, you're 5% better. You're not making like leaps and bounds. And anyone would tell you that. Bill Burr, it took him 15 years, he says, before he like got it. Louis C.K., same deal. And so I was on board with that. I was 10 years in, or I'm 10 years in now. And then COVID happened, and all of a sudden, stand-up stages went dark.
Right.
And I was sort of left to my keyboard and broader projects and different disciplines. And all of a sudden, with much less effort, those ideas that I was generating were catching much more momentum. It felt than anything I had done in stand-up.
When you say you felt that, was it because of the people you felt like it was reaching a bigger audience, people were reaching out saying they liked it? What was that feeling?
It's more like companies, production companies, studios saying, whoa, we really like this, let's develop this. And you start to get real names signing on to the stuff you're coming up with. I was never somebody who would walk into a comedy club and have Lorne Michaels in the audience discover me. That never happened. Whereas, you had the Ellen thing, just a little blog that I wrote defending her, and she liked my tone. Or, so I had an idea for a TV show, which now I'm developing with a pretty a studio that I would never have thought would be interested in my work, at least not for another 15 years.
Wow.
So there are things happening that almost make me wonder how much farther along would I be had I toned back the stand-up earlier and focused more on the writing element, because clearly this is where I'm better.
Now, take me back to your mindset when you're working in Wyoming, and then you worked as well in Texas, correct?
Yeah, so I went, Casper, Wyoming was the first on-air job. Rio Grande Valley is the market in Texas. That's Brownsville, McAllen. That is a way down. That's 5 minutes from the border. That's a border.
Gotcha.
That's like, where Texas goes into the Gulf of Mexico?
Right.
That's where it is.
Okay.
At the point. Same latitude as Miami, way down. People don't think Texas doesn't go that far. That was a very unique experience, but yeah.
Now, what is the mindset when you're working there? I mean, you're clear, a little away from home, obviously.
Yeah.
You're still young. You're trying to work it and make it in this industry. What's the mindset? I mean, is it a grind every day? Are you really enjoying it? What's going in your head?
Yeah, every part of it. Every part of it. There's days you're driving to work and you're swearing the whole time. I can't believe I'm here. Why am I doing this? I'm making no money. People don't realize, everybody doesn't make a lot of money in their entry-level jobs. That's fine. You know what I mean? But you just no money. And, what am I doing here? I'm away from family. I wonder what my reaction would have been if I was in a small market in Texas to start, the Casper market, 198. All right, there's 210 media markets in the United States. That was 198. And it's just it's so out there and remote, and the winters sucked. You know what I mean? There are small markets that you can start at that are an hour and a half outside of Dallas, or in the middle of Pennsylvania, where it's just like, okay, well, like Philadelphia is 2 hours away, and so then you're still covering some of those big sports at the time. Like Wyoming, you're just out there. And so, yeah, I mean, I always knew it was a part of the journey. It was like whenever it got really tough and you're driving your crappy car to work and you don't know if it's going to start so that you can get to work, and meanwhile, you're the person on TV wearing a suit. So the people in town think you're like doing okay. Like you're not. And so it's just, but like anytime it got so bad, anytime you're really like down in the dumps about it, it's just like, well, do I want to do this? Yes. There was no other option. I wasn't like, well, maybe I'll do this industry. Then you can kind of make some money. If you're an accountant, you can be okay in your 20s, but it's like, no way. I'm never doing that. And I heard enough from people while I was in college and early on. It's like, just get through the grind. It's going to pay off, and just like get to where you're wanting to go. And then also it's like at the end of the day, like when I, put on my crappy suit and like wore my $7 ties from Ross Dress for Less and like put on my own makeup to go on and do highlights of the girls volleyball game, it was fun. Like that part is still fun. And it's just like, well, if that's part's fun, then you're doing the right thing and you'll get to where you want to go. But it's like, sometimes you're on fire. I just made an awesome thing. I'm going to put that on my resume tape. That could get me the job. Like you'd have those moments of like, that could be the thing that catches the attention and gets the next job. And that's something that now I don't really get. Like I get something that was a great call, but I'm not like, cool, I wonder if the NBC sports guy will let me call NHL someday because of that call. So you kind of lose that. So you get those moments of euphoria about it, but it was sprinkled in with just a lot of junk too. And a lot of like, and looking back on it when you get older, I should have had a better mindset towards that. I wish I had this better mindset, but you only get those sort of things with experience and age, and so that was part of it.
Were there ever any doubts along the way if you'd quote unquote make it? I don't know what your definition of make it at the time was.
I mean, I think, so like your definition of making it, I think changes because when you start, you're like, well, yeah, I'm going to do this and this. And then my dream job is to get to Boston. And then my dream job is to get to ESPN and Anchor Sports Center. It's like, yeah, I can do it. Like I could do that. You almost have a self-inflated sense of how good you are too when you're a beginner. I think that happens in a lot of different things. It's like, oh yeah, look at me. Like I'm on fire. I'm going to get there. And then you like, you get in the business and then you see like in Casper, so, in those small markets, you sign a contract for a couple of years, you're going to be there for a little bit. But then you see other people that are trying to get their next job. And then you're like, wow, like that person's good too. Like my friend Walter, he's good. He's a good news anchor and he's having trouble getting his next job. So man, maybe I should pare down my make it to, I want to work in a market with pro sports teams, so that I can cover the NFL and the NHL and baseball and whatever. And like, if you told me in Casper that all of a sudden, like your career's not going to take you to Boston ever, but you're going to be able to work in, St. Louis and cover the Blues and the Rams at the time. I'd be like, that's cool. That's cool. That's big sports. Never wanted to live in St. Louis, not a particularly awesome city, but yeah, man, that's what I got into business for. If you told like you're going to spend your career in Denver covering those teams and you're going to be the 30-year guy in Denver that is just the part of the fabric of the sports industry there, I'd be like, yeah, I'm good with that. That to me then became making it. And anything on top of that would have been gravy. And as such, my big market job, from Texas to Boston, that the big jump that you like dream about, can I make a jump that big or am I going to have to go 4 more jobs in between? Because some people do it that way. Mine happened to be Boston. And then I was just like, holy smokes, I made it,
So now with regards to your stand-up career, where do you stand on it today?
Man, that's a great question. I don't really know. All I can say is that I don't really miss it that much. I haven't performed in probably a month, maybe a little longer. I did go on the road to Kansas City and did a full weekend there, which was really fun. I loved it again and felt reinvigorated after that. But the old routine of, you do your work all day and then you get on a city bike and you bike over to the Stand and the New York Comedy Club, and you're out doing spots from 7:30 till 10:30 p.m. I don't know, man. It just I don't really miss that much. And it's funny because I'm hesitant to even admit it, because in stand-up in New York, the moment you say, like, I have doubts that I want to be doing this, people like excommunicate you.
Huh.
They don't think you're part of the mix anymore. You're not one of us anymore. And it takes you so long to become part of that inner circle. And you have to stay with it by getting up and constantly showing face and hanging at the club hours upon hours. And I didn't miss that much.
Have you talked to fellow stand-ups about this feeling?
I have. And I'm very good friends with Shane Gillis. And, Shane is, to me, the next big stand-up star.
Okay.
I really believe that. And he's out, he's still out. He can't stop. Like, it's he knows unequivocally that that's what he wants to do. And I envy that, but I'm also against his feelings and his certainty. It's even more clear to me that, I can't say that stand-up for me is the end-all be-all. Like, my dream, yes, originally was to be an arena comic or a theater comic, selling out, doing specials every year, all that. And now I have to say it's morphed. Like, I might be just as happy, if not happier, to be, writing a TV show on Netflix, or starring in a TV show, or hosting a late night show, whatever. I'm open to the idea of different dreams.
Are there any particular dreams that stand out in your head of the things you just listed atop that list?
Well, I think some of them seem closer at hand than others. And I think that especially in the TV world, a series is something that really excites me right now. Whether I'm acting in it or not, or just producing it and writing for it, and all of that is a very exciting thing. And the big reason is that it's a distinct possibility for me right now. I'm working on something, and
are you allowed to talk about it a little bit? Not really.
There have been rumors about it. People have talked about it. It's a show that I've created that is loosely based on some of the experiences that I've had over the last 5 years. But it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to talk about it because it could just die tomorrow.
Right.
It's so binary. It's either going to be the greatest thing that has ever happened to me in my life, or it's not going to be anything at all.
Does that stress you out?
It didn't for a long time, because I was just convincing myself that it wasn't going to happen, and betting against it, and really committing my brain to the exercise of saying, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. But you cross a point where the pieces keep coming together, and it keeps taking shape, and more people get interested, and more people buy in, and names get attached, and money gets figured out, and contracts get signed. And all of a sudden you realize, if this doesn't happen, I will be heartbroken. And that's the way the entertainment industry works a lot of the time. And unfortunately, a switch was flipped, where one day I woke up and I was like, we've come so far now that if this does not happen, I will be devastated. And I'm there now of stand-up.
Are you still writing jokes or content or material?
Yes, I am. But I'm also writing more stuff that's not, that's less stand-up-y and is more, like, I want to say, like, world building-y, or, laying an outline for a movie or a potential novel, or, it's just more long-form stuff. The thoughts play out less set-up punchline.
Have you enjoyed that more?
I enjoy that they are these ideas are met with more excitement by people with power.
Okay.
You know, like there just seems to be a quicker road in this world to success and paychecks. I hate to say that.
So, no, but it's honest.
Yeah.
But which part of your workday would you say you enjoy the most, though? Just raw enjoyment.
You know what I really love doing are these parking videos.
I wanted to bring that up.
I really like doing these parking videos that I've been doing.
They're great.
Thank you.
I saw the one where you got the ticket.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate.
That was probably the worst one, though, because there was nobody on the street that day. The best part is interacting with the people on the street and trying to really showcase the anxiety and the chaos.
Well, I just read a New York Times. I don't know if you saw it. There was a New York Times article about the exceedingly, what is it? There's so many cars and tickets and all that.
Yeah, basically, when the restaurants opened up a lot of these outdoor dining places, that the city gave them, a lot of space on the sidewalk or the bus lane or whatever that might be used for parking.
Right.
So a lot of the parking spaces have disappeared, and so with fewer parking spaces and more people needing cars, the demand for parking in New York has reached a hysterical level, which translates to people getting angry very quickly.
So where did the alternate side parking idea come from?
My girlfriend had a coworker who one day she had expressed via some, Slack chat, how hard it was for us to find parking on the street in New York, and was wondering if everyone was just paying the $500 a month for a parking garage thing. And one of her coworkers said that every week he and his wife or whatever took turns sitting in their car from 9 to 10:30 during the window when the street sweeper comes. That allows you to not get a ticket. And if you sit in your car, you wait for the street sweeper to come.
And you get your spot.
He comes, everyone pulls out into the street, he cleans, and then you re-parallel park and you take back your spot. And then I did it. I decided to try it for the first time. And I just started shooting some Instagram stories of it. And it was very kind of raw and I didn't know what was going on. And I put up like 6 or 7 stories, including when the sweeper came, which was terrifying because I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know the process. And there is a process. And most people get it, but a bunch don't. And all it takes is one person who doesn't know what they're doing to fuck the whole thing up. And then you also get people coming in to try to prey upon those people and steal spots. And so I took this and I got a bunch of DMs from people being like, yo, this is wild. What is this? And then my manager was like, why the hell did you not post that as a full post? This is one of the funniest things I've seen you do. And I was like, all right, next week I'll do a full one. And then the next week I just did a bunch of clips. I sent it over to my editor to kind of cut. Yeah. And if you go back and watch the first one, since then, it's developed.
They get better each week.
So much where like now I know the guy who drives the street sweeper and he's become a character. And, I know people on the street. I have like terms I use and, there's just, I get it. So I have a very good understanding of how it works now. And it's very fun to try to capture it. And it changes every week because you never know what's going to happen.
But it's always every Thursday.
Every Thursday, yeah. Alternate side parking Thursdays.
I love it. I mean, it's one of those things that you don't even expect, but who knows? Maybe it could turn into a little sketch one day or something.
This is the thing about comedy and social media where, it seems like everything that I thought would work in my career didn't. And then the things that I didn't think would work.
What did you think? What did you think would work, and that didn't?
I once tried to do a series of makeup tutorials, spoofing all these YouTube stars who do these makeup tutorials, and I thought that me doing bad makeup tutorials, not knowing what I was doing, would be funny. It wasn't that great, right? But I thought that would be hysterical. And then one day I sat down at my piano during the final season of Game of Thrones and just like sang to the theme song of Game of Thrones what I thought would happen on the episode that night in 1 minute. And those videos started blowing up.
Wow.
And I'm like, really? This is what they like? Instead of the highly produced makeup tutorials? So it's like Game of Thrones songs, right? Alternate side parking Thursdays. I don't know. I'm just throwing shit at the wall. I have no idea what's going to work. And it's terrifying.
Is it? Isn't it kind of exciting too?
It is exciting. It's really exciting when you find something that works, but it's also leaves you vulnerable to try something that could either not work or get you in huge trouble.
But I think
which is exactly what happened at Barstool.
That's true. But
and everyone's like, you should have known better. And it's like, dude, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have not known what I'm doing since the moment I started this. I don't know what's funny. I don't know what's funny. I don't know what people will think is funny from me. So I'm guessing. And you hope that your hits go from like 10% to 20. You just want to increase your hit rate. But I don't know. What, like tomorrow I'll shoot a video and people will fucking hate it. And then the next day I'll be like, well, maybe this will work. And all of a sudden it'll go viral. And you're like, why? I have no idea.
Be in. Have you always had that that mentality of, you know what, I want this, so I'm going to do everything it takes to get there?
Well, I think everyone has it. I'm going to borrow something that I heard. It's not mine. It's Jerry Seinfeld's. And like, this is the most popular video I ever posted to my Twitter account.
Okay.
If you love something enough, it's not a grind. Like there will be parts of it that are grindy. Like I mentioned, you know, you got to get through the tough parts, but like I said, like if it's fun to step on camera and do those highlights at the end of the night and you like that part of it enough, then you will do whatever it takes to keep doing that. And this Seinfeld was on Howard Stern, like in the earlier in the year, like in May or something like that. And I don't listen to Howard Stern regularly. Like I don't have satellite radio, but like when he has a good guest on, I'll sign up for a free trial so I can listen to the interview. So like he had Seinfeld on. I was like, well, I got to listen to this because I'm just a huge Seinfeld fan, both for his show and his comedy and stuff, but just like, he's just a really smart guy. And he has this life perspective that a lot of people don't have. And he's able to make light of it. So I was like, what a perfect time to listen to Jerry Seinfeld for an hour. And, they were talking about the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. And like Howard was mentioning, it's just like, I appreciated so much the will that he had to get better and to ultimately, you know, he's just like, and I had the same thing in radio where I was just bad. I was bad at first and I just, you know, wanted it enough and I just had the will to get better. And Seinfeld corrected him. He says, what you did was not will. And what Michael Jordan has was not will. That put your head down and grind only gets you so far if you don't like it. He's like, what you had and what Michael Jordan had and what I have is love. If you love what you do, you will never run out of energy to do it. You know, and I was just like, oh man. And that's when I started I started getting a little more creative with my Instagram this year. I was just like, it doesn't just have to be pictures of me and my family or like, you know, I'm in Vancouver, look at this building, you know? So I was just like, oh, you can put out messages and different things that resonate with you. So I clipped off like 2 minutes of that. And for some reason, this is weird. On Instagram, like it got like 400 views. It got retweeted. Like Louis Riddick put it out. I want to say it has like 800,000 views. It's like a little 2-minute clip and it's static. It's not even video. I just made like a quick thing. I put a picture of each of the guys on there. And it was just like, here's what it takes to be great. And it's like 2 minutes of like Seinfeld saying it's love. You know, love is as he puts it, the bottomless pool of energy, and you'll never run out. And you can have the discipline, the work ethic, whatever, and that's all good. But if you don't love it, it doesn't matter. You know, if you have discipline, work ethic, but you're doing something that you don't love to do, ultimately, then you're not going to achieve as high. You know, you could be good at something and whatever, but you're not going to be like really good. You're not going to achieve to the ultimate level that you ultimately want to.
I really like that. And I also, it makes me wonder for you, what is it about this sports broadcasting world that you've always loved?
I'm a Leo, so I like attention, always liked attention, always like to talk, and always love sports, as I mentioned. And so it's like, you know, when you're out in your yard shooting baskets and you're in your head, like doing the 3-2-1 call of the game type of thing and like playing knee hockey and announcing along to it. And it was just like, I was just such a big fan of sports that I was like, I got to do it. And then when I started doing it, I found out that it's like, you do love it as much as you think. And then the more you find out about anything, the more there is to know, like, what was the quote the other day? It was like, as our island of knowledge gets bigger, so too does the shore of our ignorance. Like as you start learning more about something, you also understand how much you don't know about it and how much you want to keep kind of conquering that. And so about sports broadcasting, was just like, yeah, I just loved it. Just the sports talk shows that made me laugh, the highlight guys on Sports Center that were funny, the call of the game that was iconic for a big moment, just all the different parts of the entertainment of it and front row seat for sports and everything. It was just, and then, to be on camera, to talk about in this case, talk about myself, but like, to hear your voice and to like have that attention. It's like there's plenty of news people that don't get in it for themselves. And then like, there's a lot of people that like the time, like Bruce Buffer likes hearing himself do all that. And, but you have to have an element of that to be really, really good at it. And then you got to know how to marry it. And so, it's just, there's different parts of it that I've loved, and you just keep finding new parts of it that are just a lot of fun.
Now I have a separate question. What would perhaps a 36-year-old Mark Manson tell that 23 or 24-year-old living on Comm Ave?
It's funny. I've thought about this before. I actually wrote a piece a few years ago. It was called A Letter to My 18-Year-Old Self. My 23-year-old Mark, I think he was all right. I wouldn't change a whole lot. The only thing I would tell 23-year-old Mark was to not be such a selfish dick sometimes. My problem when I look back at myself 12, 13 years ago, I had a tendency to be a little bit self-absorbed and to not, just to be a little bit too selfish. And I would just tell him like, hey man, chill out. Like, it's gonna be okay.
But why were you selfish or self-absorbed, do you think?
I think I was insecure. I was insecure, particularly like socially insecure. And so I overcompensated in a lot of ways. I tried too hard in some ways. And so, and in the process of trying too hard, I was insensitive towards people. So that's really the only thing that I think because like I was clueless in a lot of other ways, but those were good ways. It was like I had no idea what I was doing when I started my business, but that was part of it. That was good. Like I needed to figure that out. This was a cluelessness that it was like, it didn't need to be that way.
When did you feel like you became less self-absorbed or less selfish, dickish Mark Manson?
Dickish Mark Manson. I think it happened gradually throughout my 20s, but the real turning point was meeting my wife. Something about her humbled me in a lot of ways.
When did you guys meet?
2012. So I was 27. And it's funny too. It's actually, this is the first time I've thought about this, but it's kind of ironic because my item mentality in my 20s, item mentality that I think a lot of young men have, which is this idea that like we kind of see women and relationships as like something to be achieved. It's like a trophy. It's like I'm gonna get like the hottest, most badass girlfriend, and we treat it as if it's like a football game or something. And I had a tendency to do that when I was young, and it was funny because I think my mentality back then was like, once I found my dream girl, I was gonna be the fucking man, and like everybody's gonna respect me and all this shit. And the complete opposite happened when I met her. When I met her, I'm like, wow, none of this matters. None of this matters. I am so full of it. And it was freeing. It was such a liberating experience.
Now, at what point did you realize that the subtle art was taking off? I mean, I don't like, did you realize right when it came out that there was all of this hype? I don't know. I don't know exactly. I mean, you probably know, the numbers and
Sure.
how it kind of took off, but did it kind of go quickly, or was it a slow, gradual process and then it quickly took off? How'd that process go?
Uh, it took a while. It came out September 2016.
So you were 32 at the time, correct?
Yeah, I was 32.
Okay.
It debuted at number 6 on the New York Times list, which that was the goal, going into the launch, was like, just hit the New York Times list and everybody's going to be happy. Did that, fell off a few weeks later, and it sold okay for a few months. And then it was around November, December, that actually the audiobook started to take off on Audible. Amazon picked it as I think its favorite nonfiction book for that year. And then its algorithm, I guess the reviews or whatever, the algorithm started recommending it to people. And the audiobook just started going crazy. And by like February, March 2017, the hardcover came back and started just selling a bajillion copies. And it didn't look back after that.
I think I even read a statistic. So yeah, over 12 million copies sold. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it spent, as of May 2020, 179 weeks in the top 10, which is insane.
Yeah.
Do you ever, I mean,
3.5 years.
have you had a chance yet to kind of take a moment, reflect? And, because what I love about it is some of the moments that you talk about, those initial struggles post-college. And for me, having you gone to BU, knowing kind of, where you lived, because that's where I am for most of the time.
Sure.
Do you ever have, those moments where you can sit back, enjoy exactly where you come from and that struggle that you went through? I mean, as everyone does. I mean, you in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, there were plenty of moments of gratitude and appreciation and stuff. I mean, the interesting thing about a book that's kind of, or about being an author, it's a little bit different than, say, like being a musician or a movie star or whatever. It's, if you're a musician, you go to the arena, you play to the huge crowds, fans are screaming in your face. If you're, you have a hit television show, every time you walk outside your apartment, people are looking at you on the street, running up to you, asking for autographs. If you're an author that hits it big, your life is exactly the same as it was before. It's the only thing that changes.
Way more emails?
Yeah, way more emails. But the only thing that like materially changes is that every 6 months, a gigantic check shows up in your bank account. And you're like, okay, where did that come from? Nobody recognizes you. Nobody, like, your life, your day-to-day life is pretty much unchanged. So it's nice in a way, because you can kind of just, I should say the other difference too, sorry to go back a little bit, is that books tend to have like a longevity to them, so if a hit movie comes out, it's huge for a month or two and then it's over, or an album that's huge for 6 months and then you tour and then it's over. The book, it can go on for years. So it's like a very low level, slow celebration over a long period of time.
And I think what's, to that point, even more so with your book specifically, I think what resonated with me, and I think what resonated with probably the other 12 million people that read it, is your book there's no expiration date on the ideas that are in it, right? I mean, and this is not just something that Americans go through, some of the not giving a fuck or giving too many fucks. It's things that, it's all about human nature. So for me, what I think, not only is it brilliant from, forever in terms of, marketing, but in terms of just the ideas itself, these are things that people are always going to struggle with. They're always going to struggle with dating. They're always going to struggle with work. They're always going to struggle with being miserable. And so this is something for me that's a book that lives in perpetuity. And I don't know if that's something that you intended to do. I'm curious if that's something that you wanted or you hoped for. But I think that you did a brilliant job in executing that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a nice side effect of being in kind of the niche or the genre that I'm in, which is like the self-help or personal development genre. It's like the concepts don't change. It's the stuff in my book. It's, people writing about it hundreds of years ago. Philosophers were talking about it in ancient Greece, so it's not, the advice doesn't change. It's just that every generation of people needs to learn it again or needs to be reminded of it every 10 or 20 years. So it wasn't intended, but I've always been aware that that's a nice side effect of kind of the genre that I exist in. Interestingly, Everything is Fucked is a little bit more timely. It's a little bit more focused on, it came out pre-pandemic, but it was a little bit more focused on, why is everybody losing their mind online? Why is everybody so miserable and depressed and anxious all the time? Why does everybody feel persecuted? You look out the window, everything's fucking great. Yet you go on Twitter and it's like the apocalypse is happening every 3 days. So it's a little bit more timely, and it'll be interesting to see if interest in it falls off a few years from now. But yeah, subtle art will probably, hopefully, be read for decades.
Talk to for perhaps the casuals out there that don't understand the art of play-by-play calling. Will you kind of run through how that is different from anything else in the broadcasting scene, and perhaps then what your preparations would look like as a play-by-play announcer for the UFC?
So it's the easiest way to boil it down is if you're in the studio, you are either talking about something that has already happened or that's something that has not happened yet. Right? It's a preview show. What do you look for in this fight? Blah, blah, blah. You're predicting the future. Who's going to win? How's it going to go? What's the X factor? But when you boil it down, that's all just noise. That's just noise of like, here's what we think is going to happen. Nobody ever knows. And then the recap, after something's happened, all right, let's relive it. And there's value to both of those. Like, I love getting ready for a big fight with a preview show just as much as anybody else in Fox, NFL, whatever. And then the recap show, you want to see it again, just be like, okay, good job, Moreno and Figueiredo. Pay-per-view next month, everybody. It's like, no, you got to relive that, And so there's value in both of those, but in the role of the broadcaster and those, nothing is as fun as, calling the big head kick, calling the shot, like wondering aloud to everybody watching with them, like my hands are being clenched as this rear naked choke gets set in. Like, is he going to get out? Oh, and he's out, but we just get to voice it. And so to be the voice of that, and then to be the voice of that in real time and kind of like keep tabs on it. Like when Wonder Boy fought Jeff Neal, and like he had that knee injury. So like Wonder Boy's cruising, and all of a sudden, like he's got to make it through 5 more minutes on a knee that we don't know how bad it is. And it's just like, that's like sweaty palms. Like, is he gonna be able to move, or now he can't move as well? So Neal's going to tag him with something or whatever. So to like live in that moment of anxiety with that everybody's feeling when you're watching a big event, but to be able to voice it and kind of like be cool under pressure, but then have the outbursts of the big knockouts. And then your voice gets to live on that finish or highlight forever. And unlike in other sports, like they don't show a lot of NFL promos with Joe Buck calling like touchdown Giants. Like that's not really part of the promos, but in the UFC, it's all part of the promos.
That's a great point.
Like, and so I learned that when I called Sean O'Malley's knockout, which was the first Contender Series that I did. And then they used it on a promo like a week or 2 later, like, hey, check out the Contender Series. And then like my call of the knockout, whatever. And I was just like, oh man, I was like, we found something here to like stroke my ego. Great fights. Like just, you get all of it. And it's like, you can't make it about yourself, but you do have to honor the moment with a big call. And then just the fact that they're going to use that to promo stuff is just, it's just so cool. I mean, it's just makes it just so much fun that I didn't really expect or know about,
And I think what also really impressed me about you is and Anik and all of you guys really. I mean, I think there's a couple things. First, it's been so cool to see all of these UFC commentators, and whether it's Megan Levy, Laura Sanko, all of you guys grow in a weird way together, because as the sport's grown. And then I think also what impresses me about yourself is how easy you guys make it. How your rhythm with Bisping or Felder is it feels so natural, and that to the viewer, we don't maybe always think about that. We're like, oh yeah, they're just doing their thing. But I'm wondering, one, has it always been that kind of fluent? Is it easy to work on that rhythm with them? Is that something you guys are even conscious about or talk about? And for you as the play-by-play, who's kind of leading the show in that sense, how does that work in factor into your preparations?
Yeah, the preparation part of it is very minor in terms of like, I'm working with Felder. Okay, so how am I going to prepare differently? For me, that doesn't cross into it unless it's like, I'm calling an Edson Barboza fight and I'm working with Felder, different story. He's fought him twice, so you want to know those like broad strokes of their history, and does it tie into something? Like Rogan was talking about the eye pokes, and then he turns to DC, and then DC's, I was hoping you weren't going to say anything, but so that part is that's just a natural part of like keeping it in your memory bank. You know what I mean? Like, Felder's dealt with this. All right, Paul, I remember you dealt with this in the past, but it's not really a part of your preparation. It's just relying on your knowledge of the sport, following it. But in terms of the chemistry, like that's part of being a professional. Like you get in it and you're just like, oh, when I get in this job, I'm just going to have back to like why I love the job so much. It's just like, I viewed it as like, so I wasn't in a fraternity, but like I viewed it as if, oh, cool. Like my job can be buddies, with your people, fellow sports fans. Hey, we'll probably golf on the weekends and whatever, and then like, I'm going to be best friends with everyone I work with because we all love sports. It's like, yeah, that is not how it works. You work with all different types. And I'm not talking about the UFC. I'm talking about my journey up. Like I didn't play a round of golf with a coworker until I was in Boston. I was like, hey, didn't you get the memo? We're supposed to be like boys and like go golfing on the weekends. Why are you so weird? But with the UFC, so it's part of being a professional to have that chemistry on the air and be good on the air. But like with the UFC, I haven't had to force any of it. Like, and I think that it speaks to the, great ability of our boss, Zach, who his job is to put the puzzle pieces in place to like stock the chessboard, and ultimately got to find guys that will fit together. And that's not the entirety of it, but when it came to pairing, like he paired me and Felder on the Contender Series that first season for a reason, like he thought that we would be good together. And it just so happens that he was right. Like Paul's from Philly. I'm from the Northeast. Like he's a funny guy, good guy, just he, and he didn't even really know our personalities. Like I didn't meet him before working with Paul, and I didn't meet my boss in person before working with Paul, but I think you got the sense of it from people that we did the audition with. And I think he looks for that and they're like, all right, now we're going to bring in an analyst. Like we know DC can be good with everybody. He's just the most jovial, friendly, nice guy. We know that, Bisping has his characteristics and Paul has his characteristics. And then like, you got to fit, you know what I mean? Like that's part of like finding the roster. So with the UFC, the chemistry thing has been like the easiest part of the job. I think that I, even as the new guy to the sport, got the respect of everybody because I loved it so much. It wasn't a forced thing. I've talked about my time at ESPNU, and it was like a lot of fun, worked with great people. But like if you're on network number 3 for ESPN and you're doing halftime of, Houston against Tulane college basketball, like that's something I'm not watching. If I'm at home, if I have the night off, I'm not watching that game. But if I have when I don't call a UFC event, I'm watching it. I'm watching the whole thing, and none of it's a chore. So I think, when you have the true love for the sport, I've jumped in and been like, wow, this is awesome. Like total respect for what they do. Got into jujitsu, like, just immerse myself in the world. And I think that they appreciate that about me. And then, so it's made the chemistry a lot easier and something that's not really a question mark.
And I think, again, going back to that, to listening to you open up about, where you were mentally and the little things that have happened, even in just the last 6 months, it's really, I think, first of all, I thank you just as really as a fan too, to see someone that you respect in, I mean, I would say you're in multiple fields, podcasting, comedy, whatever, to open up about that, but also to realize like, man, like people probably look to you as someone who has all their shit together, and you might feel like you don't. And I think that's beautiful.
Dude, yes. Thank you. It's very frustrating to not feel like you have your shit together and to be as uncertain about your future
I feel the same
as
way.
I am.
Yeah.
As a young person, your 20s are fucking hard, dude. You gain more certainty as you get older, but that uncertainty and that confusion it's scary, disorienting. You just feel like it's never gonna fucking materialize.
Right.
Julio on the podcast, my co-host, said once like that when he was 24, when he was 29, someone said to him, "Oh wow, you're about to enter your money-making years." And at the time, he was like,
"That's the worst thing to say."
But he couldn't understand what that meant because up to that point, he had lived paycheck to paycheck, right? And he'd like scraped by, and the amount of kind of just like improvising and trying to do a commercial here and maybe doing some tennis lessons there and getting a little bit of money from opening for some guy. And you know, you kind of barely make rent for like 6 years, month after month. And all of a sudden you find that you've got a little bit more leisure in your bill pay. You're finding that you can buy yourself a nice thing and not like worry about what you're gonna have to sacrifice for it. And I don't know where that comes from. You just get better at making money. Most people do, not everybody. But if you're smart and you learn along the way, you should. So yeah, but at the same time, dude, like I live in constant uncertainty and fear that and part of this is that I got fired. Right. Kind of like out of the blue one day, which I caused, but the day before, I never would have thought that I was going to get fired the next day. Right. So once that happens, every day I think I'm going to get fired today. That never leaves me.
That's interesting.
I have no certainty in my job. I don't feel like I have job security in any work that I do. And not only that, but I unfortunately am constantly waiting for that tweet from someone who digs something up from my past, some soundbite or some, thing that hasn't aged well where I was trying to be funny and it comes up. And by that point, I'm big enough that people care and then they get angry and I'm fucked. I'm just waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
Because you try to inoculate yourself against it. You go through your Twitter history and you search your own keywords and you're like, well, good. I've never said, the N-word, and I've never said any gay epithets. I've not been racial. I've not been misogynistic. I've scrubbed it all, whatever. And you think you're clean, but then it's like someone finds the clip of you on someone's podcast from 5 years ago where you chimed in when they were making crazy jokes. And you're like, you're just trying to be in the and it's not as, who knows what it'll be.
Right.
Because in 5 years
it'll change. Yeah.
That it's changed what people care about. And so to me, it's not even necessarily a question of whether or not I've said something. It's a question of whether or not I'm big enough for people to want to bring it up.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a scary way to,
doesn't that suck?
Thought.
Like with success, let's say that right now I'm in this safe zone because I'm not successful enough for people to do their homework, to sleuth around to find that misspoken thing. But the more successful I get, the more people will commit time to combing through my record, through my efforts, through my throwing shit at the wall, trying to be funny all these years, not knowing. And they'll find something for sure.
Does that affect the way you operate on a daily basis?
I mean, at the very least, I'm aware now.
Right.
So I am constantly operating as though I'm under a microscope.
Right. What's that feel like?
It's fine. It's fine. It's just challenging. I'm not blaming these people. Like, from now on, I get it, right? And part of me thinks that that's fair. You enter the big leagues, you've got to just be more accurate.
Right.
You have to be better. But I also hope, because it's not going to be, I'm not going to get canceled for something that happened after I got fired from Barstool until, from this point forward. I will get canceled for something that I did when I was 23, 24, something I wrote, some joke, something I said on a tiny podcast in someone's garage. That's what'll come up.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram at felix.levine. And if you have something to say, please leave a comment.